I'm Reverend Clyde Oden. I'm pastor of Bryant Temple AME Church here in Los Angeles, California. I am a student of politics, but more importantly, I've been involved in healthcare for a majority of my adult life. I, I was president of a healthcare organization and served the underserved for more than 3 decades. There is a very disturbing moment in American history right now. Some call it dog whistle politics. That's when you see a group of people assemble that all seem to be like-minded, yet no one else got the memo. And right now we see the convergence of birthers, we see the convergence of people who are nativists, conversion of right-wing extremists, a conversion of people that call themselves rabid pro-life or anti-abortionists, convergence of people who are radical in almost every social perspective. And you hear them say, we want our country back. But when you look at this group, they seem to have one thing in common. They're all white, and they're all middle age, and most of them seemingly come from the South or from regions of the country in which the issue that affects black folks in terms of our equality, in terms of our place in this nation, are always at play. These people are right now trying to marginalize our president by beginning by saying he's not even a citizen. And even though it is laughable, it's not, because it's a planned attack. These people are saying that the idea of providing health care to all Americans is somehow Soviet, when it's not at all, when every industrialized country other than ours provides health care for all of its citizens. These people raise questions about Justice Sonia Sotomayor and her nomination to the Supreme Court. These people are saying some things and saying some ugly things that are poisoning the drinking water in our public square. And my concern is that they're setting the predicate up for something very dastardly, that they're going to make it acceptable for some weak-minded person to try and kill our president, or to try and kill leaders in this nation, to try and ferment some kind of revolution so that they can negate the last election, so they can nullify the will of the people, so that they can somehow scare people back into their homes and houses and retake this nation. These people were silent the last 8 years when our constitutional rights were trampled upon by the Bush and Cheney people. These people cry for fetuses, but will not cry for babies with distended stomachs. These people are persons who are dangerous to the American way. They're dangerous to people of color. They're dangerous to a majority of this country. And there's a concern about what's going on right now. And I want to spread the word that we ought not just laugh at them, because behind this group of people are persons who are pulling the strings, who are purposefully manipulating for a much grander movement. And let me just explain a little bit in terms of what it is I'm seeing. What happened in the last election is that nearly 70% of the electorate came out and supported change. But they know that if they want to steal the election again, what they have to do is to somehow get persons who came out last time not to show up in 2010 and 2012. And what they know is that if you make things negative enough, people will give up hope. And only the rabid persons of a particular perspective will show up. And so what they're trying to do now is to begin beating the drums now, to give this larger message that what to use. Why should we even support the change agenda? And if they are lucky, as they would see it, they would be able to discourage the turnout in the next elections. and therefore stop the progressive movement that's going on now. It's a very disturbing scene. It's a very disturbing situation. And the only way that we can counter that is to be alert about what's happening. Don't laugh at these takeovers of these public hearings and these public meetings. Don't laugh at the fact, or don't think that these folks are just being silly. Don't think that Sarah Palin is just being cute when she talks about death panels. Don't think for a moment that these so-called words by Glenn Beck, when he calls the president a racist, don't think he's just talking out the side of his neck, because it's all part of a much greater scheme in which they are blowing the dog whistle. They're sending out a signal to people who are on the extremes. You need to connect the dots that right now they're selling more guns and ammunition in this country than ever before. But it's not happening in the city. It's happening way out in the rural areas. Militias are growing at a very quick rate right now, and they're trying to call back the American terrorists to, like McVeigh, who blew up the building in Oklahoma City. They're trying to call them back so that they might, in fact, create the ferment and set the ground for the, quote, retaking of America. Dog whistle politics is a expression that came up when it said that when certain coded words would be used, it would go past most people. They wouldn't hear it, except for a certain group of folk that when they heard it, they knew they were being called into things. For example, for black folks, when we hear somebody say, "you people," that's a code word. We know what they're talking about. That's a dog whistle when they say it in another way. When they say, "we want our country back," that's a dog whistle. That's just not an expression. When they say, "we want to go back to the way the country used to be," that's a dog whistle saying we want to go back to way past 1954. We want to go back to when black folks were enslaved. We want to go back to when certain group of aristocratic white folks were in charge. That's the dog whistle. It is a set of coded expressions or words that not everybody will hear. But when you see a reaction by a certain group of people, and you see that they all have the same thing in common, as if they got the memo and didn't nobody else get the memo, that's the dog whistle of politics. Well, based upon what we observe on television, the people that we're seeing are persons who did not support Barack Obama, who are not supporting any progressive change in legislation, and they are using extreme expressions to try and hold down any change. And they would say that it is, quote, un-American to provide health care for all Americans. They don't see the contradiction in seeing some 47 to 50 million Americans not covered by health care, when in fact many of them don't have health care. You will hear them say they don't want a government takeover of health care, when in fact most of them, or many of them, are already on Medicare, and they don't even seem to understand the fact that they're already in a government program. But these are folks who can be convinced to go against their own self-interest because issues of racism or issues of racial pride, as they would understand it, seem to trump everything else. And that's what we're seeing. Make no mistake about it. These folks are being encouraged to show up. These are the ones who don't want an exchange of ideas. They are afraid of ideas. The same way as we see that majority of the Republican Party, when you see a discussion about health care, they would rather say no. Or when you see a discussion about any social policy, they would rather say no rather than put out a particular idea that they have. So it's not against addressing a problem, it's just trying to stop a particular kind of solution. And so yes, we see persons who are becoming very scripted, and you know they're scripted when they begin by saying, I'm not reading a script, I'm not from a particular group. But then you hear them point by point follow the points that you can find on the internet any day.